Alright, this video will be specifically discussing the tree ordinance and why I see it as being beneficial to the community and why I see it as being absolutely necessary. I guess I would start out by saying that there are two kinds of people in the world. Those that can see a problem and are willing to address it, and those that can see a problem and are willing to ignore it. We have a problem. We have a problem that's been a long time in the making. We have a problem that hurts our communities. We have a problem that costs our taxpayers a lot of dollars. There's been a mentality for a long time that trees are good because trees are pretty. I happen to agree that trees are pretty. However, trees are important because they perform vital functions that the community needs in a tax-effective manner, and right now those functions aren't being performed, and the taxpayer is suffering as a result of it. So I want to be very clear. I don't support the ordinance just because I like trees. Trees are wonderful for neighborhoods. They have great aesthetic qualities. I support this ordinance because it's absolutely necessary to address some vital functions that we need in the city. First of all, I want to tell you a little bit about what really is being proposed. And essentially, the first step of a more comprehensive ordinance was to address all new properties being developed in Rochester would have to have boulevard trees. The way this would be done is they would be assessed a fee. The city would then make sure that the trees were planted. Typically, a new home would probably be paying for about 2 trees. Between the trees and the labor, that'd be about $400. On a 30-year mortgage at today's rates, that works out to be about $2.14 per month on the mortgage, and the homeowner's going to get a better return on investment on those dollars than perhaps anything else he or she might have in their portfolio. Probably using some relatively conservative numbers, you could look at a 20% return on investment on those dollars. The reason is because basically the big savings for the homeowner, or the big advantages for the homeowner, come in 2 ways. First and foremost, they have energy savings as the trees mature in terms of less wind in the winter and significant shading in the summer. It's been studied to death. We know that that's the case. The second thing any realtor can tell you the value of mature trees have in on a property, and that's something that unfortunately a lot of the properties that have been built in the last 20 years, they're in neighborhoods that are essentially barren. The responsible steps were not taken, which is in part why we're discussing this ordinance. Now, we're specifically talking about boulevard trees with this ordinance. However, it's probably the first step of what will be many additional pieces to come. Right now, in terms of boulevard trees, we have approximately 30,000 spots that have not been planted. So we have a 30,000 shortage, and the emerald ash borer, which was just discovered very close to us now, once that gets here, you can pretty much figure that every single ash tree we have will be dead. It will be dead, and that's going to lead to 10,000 more dead trees in our boulevards, and I hesitate to say how many citywide, but just 10,000 in the boulevards. It's really a concern, and something has to be done to start addressing this. Let's talk about why these trees perform a vital function, and why, as a city, we have a responsibility to ensure that boulevard trees are being planted. First and foremost is actually, as we plant boulevard trees, it decreases stormwater runoff. Stormwater runoff is an enormous cost issue for the city. A well-planted boulevard, which basically has trees on both sides spaced at about 35 feet per tree, as that matures, that can take a third of the stormwater runoff out of the system. That means all those ponds that have to be built can end up being built. Smaller pipes that are built can be built smaller. Stormwater runoff is a huge issue, and there's some potential tax savings. In addition to the tax savings, there's environmental savings in terms of we don't want stormwater backups. That's bad for the city as well. In addition to the stormwater runoff benefits, where the taxpayer really sees the benefit of this and why it's necessary for a city to do this is actually in terms of the shading of the asphalt in the neighborhoods itself. There were some studies done that showed that by shading the asphalt, you could increase the life of it 10 to 20%. Even if we increase the life of the asphalt by 5%, we're talking about millions of dollars in savings for the taxpayers. The reality is the heat that comes down from the sun and bakes the asphalt, that wears on the asphalt. And by having a boulevard shaded, maybe instead of that asphalt being good for 30 years, we can get 32 years. Might not sound like a whole lot, but when you're talking about the many millions of dollars we spend on roads every year, it's the enormous investment we have in our infrastructure. This is a very smart way to take care of it. And that's why the city has a responsibility of making sure that we have some boulevard trees planted. Another thing I'd like to point out is traffic calming. We have serious issues all over the city about speeding. And one of the best ways that you can slow down traffic is to have tree-lined boulevards. When I hear complaints about where the worst traffic offenses are in the city, it's no coincidence that they're typically where you have a wide street with absolutely no trees or very few trees on either side. It makes it look like a racetrack, and drivers respond accordingly. We have a responsibility to make sure that our streets are as safe as possible. I think there are some individuals with public works who have expressed to me that trees are one of the best traffic calming methods that we have. I'd like to bring up another issue that affects us with trees. If you're a person who struggles with asthma, the biggest challenge you face is particulate matter. Now, a significant source of particulate matter happens to be diesels, and what trees are wonderful doing when they're in the boulevard is removing that particulate matter from the air, and that manifests itself into less trips to the ER for asthma-related issues. And not only that, but you have to keep in mind that 47 million or so folks don't have health insurance, so they're emergency room only, and you as a taxpayer in one form or another as a ratepayer for and your insurance dollars, you're paying for this, and it's something that we know that getting particulate matter out of the air decreases the effects of or the number of asthma attacks, and it's something that trees are very good at doing. In addition to that, you have you have the aesthetic values, and you just have the oxygen being created by the trees as well. Neighborhoods with trees, you actually end up with less people actually out driving because you can actually walk somewhere. When I was campaigning, I walked through the newer parts of Country Club Manor, which are in some cases very few trees at all. And actually, I say newer, but some of it's 15, 20 years old, and there's still not much for trees there. And the neighborhoods have expressed a great frustration that they were never put in the first place, and they're having a hard time getting people to do it voluntarily. But it's easier to walk in a shaded neighborhood. I know the difference between walking on the west end of Country Club Manor and walking in Kutsky Park. And I can tell you one thing: on a hot summer day, one's a whole lot more pleasant than the other. Why $200 per tree? Seems like such an astronomical figure. Well, you can get cheap trees for a lot less, and you can plant them wrong for a lot less. And let me tell you what happens when you do that. When you hear about people's sidewalks getting ripped apart, that's because of one or two things. Or both. They planted the wrong kind of tree, which happens quite a bit, and if you plant the wrong kind of tree, it will tear up your sidewalk, and of course if the sidewalks are installed poorly as well, that complicates the matter. But the second thing is how the trees are actually planted as well. We've had issues, even with some well-meaning developers who have planted the wrong kinds of trees in their neighborhood. Particularly, we have an example of ash trees, the ones that are going to all be killed, being planted recently, and there was initially an accusation that the city had instructed them to do that there, and that in fact is not the case. That was not the case, and in short, this has to be done correctly, and we need some oversight. Now, the city is not actually going to do the work. They're just going to contract the work to see that it's done correctly, and if there's another way that we could ensure that this was done with quality, I'm not married to that model, but bottom line is we need to have trees in the neighborhood, and we need to start doing it. We can't let this hole get any bigger than it already is. I wanted to address real quick some of the objections we had, and I think some of it's just stalling. We should wait for a more comprehensive tree ordinance. No, we have a problem right now. This starts to address the problem. We need to take some action. This is ready. There are approximately 7,000 properties that are ready to go, and this ordinance would make sure that those 7,000 properties are handled correctly. We need it now. We shouldn't tell people that they have to plant trees or shouldn't tell them where to plant them. Well, actually, we're not. The reason we're doing this is we're protecting our infrastructure, and you have to realize that where these boulevard trees are being planted, that is actually city right-of-way. And we have some people who don't want sidewalks in our town, but we know sidewalks make streets safe for pedestrians, and that's why we have to have sidewalks, and trees are going to be no different in that regard. And the third one is builders and developers should be left to do this on their own. Well, if they did it, we wouldn't be in nearly as big of a problem. I think a lot of them are really good, but the bottom line is we have those few out there that just don't care. And there's no amount of education that's going to make them care. There's no amount of education that's going to make them do a good job. And the responsible ones, this shouldn't affect them because they're already doing this anyways, and if they're doing a quality job, they shouldn't see big change. But I'm more than happy to work with the developers as long as in the end, we get the street trees that we need. So I'm going to leave it right there and keep this under 10 minutes, but this is why I strongly support this ordinance. I encourage you to talk to all your city council members and have them support it as well.